All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim and her pushing his gospel in truth and in sincerity, to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon all your houses. This is the brother Quanawarth coming back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, man, we've been given, right, a whole bunch of different signs, right? Especially this last year, right? They've been happening back to back, right? Major earthquakes in diverse places, right? Flames are devouring fire, right? You had that building that went up in flames, or I think it was like 3 buildings that went up in flame in China. You've been having, major flooding, right? You've been having, again, prophecy, right, unfolding, as far as, the MO to the TB, which is the RFID micro CHIP, as well as World War III, right? Just between these different nations, right? We've been seeing all these different signs, and the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shah gave us a heavy one, yesterday, right? Or last night or the night before. I know it was in the, last 24 hours, but, ultimately the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shai, had a major sign, right? You had a replica of the Statue of Liberty, right, over in Brazil, right, ultimately fall down, face first, to the ground, man. And it was a big ass statue, not, again, not the size of the original, right here, in America, over, on the East Coast, right, in New York, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen it personally, but, but nonetheless, it was spiritual, man. Because Yahweh Shemel Shah is bringing, America down, right? We've been seeing it, man, right? Time and time again, right? Every time we look in the news, there's ultimately something, new popping up, about, basically the economic and social downfall of America, So we see America, Yahweh Shemel Shah destroying America from the inside out, but eventually, right? The Lord Yahweh Shemel Shah is going to destroy America as a whole, just in general, right? Not just spiritually, economically, financially, socially, but literally, right? He is going to destroy this fucking place, man, But I will ultimately want to, point out the fact that, this is ultimately a sign, right, that Yahweh Shemel Shah is coming for these false idols as well, because, the Statue of Liberty, or they call Lady Liberty, right, is ultimately it was a gift, from the French, from the Freemasons, right, to Freemasons, man, and again, right, she ultimately represents Libertas, right, which is a Roman goddess, right, the goddess of freedom, she also stands for, moral license, right, ultimately, having that moral license to do or be whoever you want, right, and that's ultimately what, this statue, right, represents, man, represents, wealth, right, these other nations looking at the Statue of Liberty, and they ultimately see, a chance to be, ultimately financially liberated, right? Because America, at one point by these different nations was seen, as a place that had golden streets, right? What is that in Jeremiah 51 and verse 7, right? That golden cup, right, in the Lord's hand, right? But we understand that this is the house of false idol worship, right? You got every idol here in America, man, that you can think of is here in the world, man, So I see it's through, through the spirit, man, that this is, Yahweh Shemel Shah ultimately, showing, right, the Lord's finna start coming at these false idols, man, right? Because America just set up another, or is about to set up another, false idol, that Hindu idol. I think it was in North or South Carolina, right? Which you can look it up, but there's ultimately an idol they're ultimately going to be setting up here in America, and it's going to be another big ass idol, you know, huge ass idol. They're saying it's going to be roughly, right, comparable in size to the Lady Liberty, you know. So this is a place of idols, man, and the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai is showing, right, that nah, he ain't about that shit, right? He's about to take out these false idols, man, you know. But I want to grab this before I get into that video, because I do have that video pulled up, and slack it for the long intro, you know. But this is Jeremiah 16 in the NLT, right? It says Jeremiah's prayer of confidence, right? And we are confident, right, that Yahweh Bashim Shai, you know, is finna bring this place down, right, as well as these idols, right? This is verse 19. It says, Yahweh Bashim Shai, you are my strength and fortress, my refuge in the day of trouble. Nations from around the world will come to you and say, our ancestors left us a foolish heritage, for they worshipped worthless idols. Right? Worthless idols. Right? You read in their letter to Jeremiah, right? It tells you that these, you know, and in the Apocrypha, right? It tells you, you know, that these idols are wood, right? Overlaid with gold and silver. Right, that they have no abilities. They can't have mercy upon somebody. They can't punish nobody. They cannot deliver anyone from death, you know, at all. And that's these false idols, man, right? Verse 20, it says, can people make their own gods? These are not real gods at all, right? They're not real, right? They have no ability. They have no power, right? And this is why you see the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai, you know, ultimately, you know, throw Lady Liberty, right, face down, which is, hey, we're going to get the account. Hey, the Lord did that to another false god, another false idol, right? Threw it face down to the ground, you know, in front of the masses, right? Verse 21, it says, Yahweh says, now I will show them my power. Now I will show them my might. At last they will know and understand that I am Yahweh, Bashim Yahweh Shai, man. And this is what the Lord is about to do. Right, he's about to bring this place the fuck down, man. He's about to bring Babylon, right, aka America, down, right? So we read in Romans the 9th chapter, right? He rose up Pharaoh, right, so that he can, you know what, right, show the people his power, his might, you know. And this is what we're seeing, right? Yahweh Bashim Shai rose his damn devil up, right? The modern day Pharaoh goes back to, you know, the modern president, right? The Egyptians will be the Americans, right? Because America is spiritually likened unto Sodom and Egypt, right? So the modern day Egyptians, right, the modern day Sodomites, right, are here in America, you know. So the Lord is, you know, has risen Esau, Edom, right along with America with this damn devil, you know, so that he can bring him down, man, you know. Lord finna show his might. The Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai is finna get their names magnified within the earth once again, and this is gonna be the last time, because it will forever be known. You know, just based off of the judgment, right, that is going to be dealt out, you know. So I'm going to grab this video and I grab a couple more precepts, man. Right. This is GMS News, right? It says Statue of Liberty falls in Brazil. Let's go ahead and play it. Right, so there you have it, right? You had the whole statue fall face first, right, down to the ground and break. And you see how, you know, the long arm that was up, right, got broken off, the head got broken off. And the Lord did the exact same thing, right, to a false idol in the past. Right, that's spiritual, man. Let's grab this. This is 1 Samuel 5 and verse 1. It says, and the Philistines took the ark of the Most High and brought it from Ebenezer unto Ashdod. You know, it says, when the Philistines took the ark of the Most High, they brought it into the house of Dagon, and they set it by Dagon. Dagon is a false idol, right? I think it was an idol with a fish head, if I'm not mistaken, right? Which is what you see the priests, right, over there in the Vatican, you know, within Catholicism, right? They wearing that big ass pointy hat, right? And there's like space between the front and the back of it, right? It looks like a fish mouth open. That's ultimately a representation, or a modern representation of Dagon, the fish god. That's ultimately what it is. You could look it up. Matter of fact, I'm gonna look it up right now. So there you go, right? Dagon, fish god, right? That's Dagon. So he's got a man with a fish on the top of his head. It's got that opening like you see, right there. That's what it's ultimately representing, right? So this is saying that ultimately the Ark of the Covenant, right? Really, the seat of the Most High, was sitting right next to Dagon, right? As if Dagon is worthy, right, to be put in the same temple as the Most High Yahweh and His only beloved begotten Son Yahweh Shai, right? It says, verse 3, it says, and when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the Ark of the Most High Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, and they took Dagon and set him in his place again. So they set him back up. So the Lord knocked him down. Like, come on now. Which is spiritual too, man, because ultimately, when you're bowing down, to something, right, you're ultimately, you're ultimately subject unto it, right? The Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai is the one that ultimately created, these or allowed, for these people to create their false idols. Right, the Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai is the one that's over all these false gods, man. He's over all of them. Right, there's but one power. That's the Heavenly Father Yahweh, right, through His only beloved begotten Son Yahweh Shai, right? It says, and when they arose early on the morrow morning, right, the next day, right, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the Ark of Yahweh, and the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off from the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him, right? So the Lord cut him up, right? Lord cut him up, right? Lord probably, possibly, and this is a possibility, just speculation. The Lord sent an angel down there and used that, cut him up, broke him in pieces, man. Could have been clean cuts too, perfect, with precision laser cuts. Dice him up, man. And this is what we just seen, right? The Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, right, ultimately had it to where this statue just fell and broke in pieces, man. Again, we're about to see Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, magnify His name in the earth again, man. By destroying all of these idols, the number one idol being what? The Statue of Liberty, which represents what? America, Babylon the Great. I'm gonna give another account in 1 Kings the 18th chapter, right? Just going in on the time of Elijah, right? All the prophets of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai were ultimately being persecuted, and killed, and there was ultimately a bet, right, that was waged, right, on whose power, right, is real. It says, we'll drop down right to get into the point. Verse 17, it says, and it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said unto him, art thou he that troubleth Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, and hast followed Baalim. Right? It says, now therefore send and gather me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. Right? So he said, hey, go gather all Israel. He brought them. Let's drop down to 22. It says, and we're going to jump down a little bit, man. Just want to get to the points. It says, then said Elijah unto the people, I, even I, only remain a prophet of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Right? That's a lot of prophets, right? It says, let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under it. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under it. and call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, and the power that answereth by fire, let him be the Most High. And all people answered and said, it is well spoken. So they made a bet, right? They entered into a wager, right? And what happened was, hey, they did their thing, but they weren't getting any answer, right? Dropping down to verse 28, it says, and they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets, till the blood gushed out of them, right? They were cutting themselves, man. You know, it says, and it came to pass when midday was past, and they prophesied unto the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, there was neither voice nor any to answer, nor any that regarded. Again, right? They're just false idols, right? They're just false idols. They don't have no actual power, right? You can have all these different, prophets and personalities and so on and so forth, right? That you want to call them, right? That ultimately are going to try to sit here and convince you that this is real, but it's not, right? You got all these fucking Christian pastors. They got so much flair. They got so much, buoyancy. They got, all these characteristics, making it sound real good, real, fluffy. You know what I mean? Warms up the heart. But see, guess what? Right? They're false prophets. They're false prophets. Just like a lot of these guys within Israel, right? That know they're Israelites. Right? They're false prophets, man. They make it sound good, right? As the scriptures say, with vain words, right? Deceiving the hearts of the simple, man. Because they do it, they're hirelings, right? They do it for, for a price, for, make merchandise of you, right? They don't do it for Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, man. This is why you have, as Elder Apostle Kabar made the statement, you have more false prophets than you do true prophets, right? In this case, you have 450 versus 1, right? That's a complete lopside. If this is like a basketball game, man, Elijah would have lost. But see, this ain't a basketball game, man. This is dealing with the truth. This is dealing with the highest power in existence. This is the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. They're omnipotent, man. Starting with the Heavenly Father, right? They're omnipotent. Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. The Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and His only beloved begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. They're omnipotent, meaning all powerful. Which is why, the beginning with the elder apostles, right on down, right? We warn you, don't be messing with the Most High in His name. Like IUIC, Nate from IUIC does, man. And all as well as these other guys, man. They play with His word. They play with His name. Hey, well, the Lord is long suffering, man, and the Most High is gonna get the last laugh. But nonetheless, right? We'll keep reading. It says, verse 30. It says, Elijah said unto all the people, come near unto me, and all the people came near unto him, and he repaired the altar of Yahweh that was broken down. And Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the word of Yahweh came, saying, Israel shall be thy name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of Yahweh, and he made a trench about the altar as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. And he put the wood in order, and cut the bullocks in pieces, and laid him on the wood, and said, fill 4 barrels of water, and put it on the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. And he said, do it the second time. And they did it the second time, and he said, do it the third time, and they did it the third time. And the water ran down about the altar, and he filled the trench also with water. And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Yahweh, power of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that thou art power in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word. Hear me, O Yahweh, hear me, that this people may know that thou art Yahweh power, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of Yahweh fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their face, and they said, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, He is the power. Yahweh, He is the power. And Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal, let none of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slew them there, right? So ultimately, again, right, it was proven, right? The Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua made it evident, right, that He is the one and only power, man. the one and only power. You know, and this is what we're going to see, you know, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua Salaki. Let me, phone just went to 5% mode, so let me brighten that back up. You know? So Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua proven right here, right, that he is the one and only power, man. And again, we've seen this same thing, you know, going back to 1 Samuel, the 5th chapter, right, him knocking down Dagon, right? We've seen that same thing happen just now, right, with the Statue of Liberty, you know? So, hey, we're in the time where Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua is going to prove to the world that he is the one and only, you know? You know? And it's beautiful, man. You know, call law Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua. And we're in some very beautiful times, man. Very spiritual signs are happening, right, all around us, man. And if you're not in the spirit, hey, you're not going to catch it. You know? It's going to go right over your head, man. Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua. Hey, 2026 is going to be a very, 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 very heavy year, man. You know, Lord will through the spirit, man. You know, but keep your eyes open. Keep watching, keep praying, keep trusting in Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua to the end. You know, again, keep watching, keep praying. You know, very spiritual signs happening all around us, man. You know, so with that, Lord wills, edifying, Lord wills, straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua B'Hashem Rachak Wadash, double honor to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone. Till next time, I say shalom.